So, while not too much happens in this chapter, I genuinely do appreciate when we get small story beats like this because it allows, for one, Yora to outright state his new intentions with the Hishaku and what he plans to do with not just the Shinichi Magatsumi, but also the Sword Saint, partnering up with him and ruling the country with an iron fist and the power that Kunashige Rokuhira created but was not willing to use, as in what Yora and the Sword Saint would call it, the correct way. And while I appreciate giving Chihiro and Samura the chance to stew on this new information, because again, for Samura, he was fully aware of what Yora was planning to do: kill the Sword Saint and become the new vessel of the malediction, the new user of the Shinichi. However, the moment that Chihiro and Samura show up and see Yora here, Samura is very aware that Yora is doing something completely different from what was initially described to him, which is honestly a very great dynamic considering Yora can throw it right back in Samura's face and say, hey, you've also changed your mind as well. Both of them have seen new paths to different futures that they didn't think was possible. Originally, Yora was completely under the delusion that the Sword Saint had fallen mentally ill and lost himself to the Shinichi's overwhelming power and was able to enact genocide, not because he thought it was the right thing to do and it was for his country, but because he was just completely out of line and had gone mad with power. Whereas now, after just touching base with the Sword Saint, Yora is able to come to the conclusion that the Sword Saint was not only fully aware of his actions, but he's more than willing to do it again, and that's exactly what Yora is looking for in not just a partner, but the world that he wants to live in. For whatever reason, even though we still don't know it yet, whatever happened to Yora to drive him to this goal is clearly strong enough to make him think that this overwhelming power that the Shinichi gives him is the only way to steer the country, and not just the country, the world, in the right direction. However he sees the world today, he feels that we are not in a correct place. Even though we have trounced the island of Shokoku and they are no longer a threat, whether this is for revenge and Yora actually is a previous member of the island that now wants to do what was done to him to the rest of the world, or he is just some other kind of entity that we haven't yet to understand yet, the very fact that these three characters here that have all had their resolves questioned, and both Samura and Yora, after seeing new futures, have changed, not only seeing how this has affected Samura, because again, now you have Samura with his eyes open. Samura is no longer blind, and instantly I love how this plays a factor in the battle, because for one, with Yora's new intentions, he has now gained full control and full dominance over the Shinichi. The Sword Saint has stopped, as he describes it, encroaching into his body and essentially inflicting Yora with some kind of debilitating nerf that is making him lose power over time. That is no longer happening now that Yora and the Sword Saint have come to a conclusion that they may be on the same side. So Yora has gained all of this new power, something that Samura even mentions is equivalent to the power of when he fought the Sword Saint 18 years ago. You also have Samura, who, now that he has chosen this new path to look at the world with his eyes open, he is now burdened with actual problems of the world around him that he can no longer shut out. The moment that Yora fires off the very first centipede, the first thought that runs through Samura's head is not only that it is as strong as it was 18 years ago, but when he looks over, he sees all of the innocent people that have yet to be evacuated that are at threat of being hurt. And while Shiba is definitely there, thankfully, to show up and teleport all of these people out of there, or at least as many as he can, in some kind of Quicksilver moment, I have to imagine that we're going to get off-screen. Shiba, the off-screen warrior that always works where we can't see him. But I think the interesting difference between people like Samura and people like Yora that have changed their minds. You have the main character, Chihiro, who has finally reappeared and has everything that he has ever wanted. Revenge for his father. And on top of that, you have the Shinichi, the actual antithesis to everything that his father once believed in, everything that his father taught Chihiro. Chihiro, unlike Samura and Yora, having wavered in their paths, and even though that has brought them to new enlightenment, Chihiro is under that same spell, under that same drive that has taken him this far. And that's why he is the only one that does not avert his eyes from the enemy. Yora gets cleaved into two places and uses the centipede and wonders to himself, with this new power, he thinks he can prove himself to the Sword Saint and is focused somewhere else. Samura again is focused on all of the innocent people that might get caught in all of the backlash. And yet again, you have Chihiro, this man who finally has everything that he's ever sought for in front of him right here, this revenge that he is ready to take part of, and he is the one that stands strong and summons all of that strength to fight Yora head on as he screams that this ends right here and now. And it's just a beautiful moment that is definitely going to set up what is going to be an all-out insane battle from here on, because watching Chihiro's power grow, the fact that he's able to teleport and use the swapping place with the fish and the crow feathers like Samura is to fight on a level similar to him, Chihiro's growth has also been insane as well. This video is sponsored by GamerSupps, the ultimate energy and focus formula. Use my code NOOP now for 10% off, and thank you GamerSupps for sponsoring the channel. And I think not only is this Chihiro meeting the aura farming quota that he has not yet been able to reach since he's been out of the story for a while, I think this shows to us the difference between these three characters and how someone like Chihiro has been chasing this one goal for so long. Nothing has gotten in the way of that at all, compared to a veteran warrior like Samura, and even this person like Yora, who has done all of this 4D, 5D chess, building up an organization like the Hashaku of all of these evil children that are more than willing to dedicate their lives to this man, and yet he, in the final moment, again changes course completely. I just love that Chihiro is, while he has gone through so much growth and development, he is that same character we saw on chapter 1, saying that he looks at himself every day and looks at the scars on his face to remind himself of the hatred that he bears for the people that murdered his father. And whether it be for revenge or it be to make sure the Shinichi never sees the light of day to bring about another malediction, Chihiro is definitely the hero that will stop the Shinichi. And while Samura will be there for support, as he was always meant to be, Samura, this person that was willing to bear all of the guilt of the world and kill the Sword Saint and all of the enchanted blade wielders himself, now actually, instead of taking on the role of solo run, he now decides to play support for the character that was able to change his mind. I gotta say, I absolutely just loved this chapter for what it was, and it just gets me more and more excited to see what is going to be coming up in the future. The very last thing that I do want to focus on before we call it quits on this video is the idea of the Sword Saint losing his mind, the idea of the Shinichi and the Sword Saint fusing together as this single entity, and whether he actually was taken over by the overwhelming, maddening power of the malediction or he was clear-headed. The one thing I will definitely say is psychopaths are more than capable of sounding lucid and competent, and like everything that they are saying is completely the right thing. There is no way to truly know if the Sword Saint is the exact same person that was Kunashige Rokuhira's brother-in-law. Because based off of what Samura says, he goes, you can really believe what you want to believe. I think it's interesting too that Yora does mention this. You guys, Samura, the enchanted blade wielders, even people in the Kamunabi, you guys have known the Sword Saint for a very long time. You guys are well acquainted with him. You know his actual name, yet you still reduce him to just the title, the Sword Saint. You dehumanize him. You claim that he lost his way, that there's no way anyone would have done something like the malediction with a clear head. Even though Yora completely believes that the Sword Saint was in the right, Samura, instead of just denying everything that Yora says, he goes, you can believe what you want. If you want to believe that he's in the right state of mind, you can. And I think that says a lot for how not just Samura, but how the Kamunabi, the government, and the world view not just the Sword Saint, but they don't want to give him the legacy of his name. They don't want to give him anything more than being a crazed lunatic that killed an entire island of people without any remorse whatsoever. Calling him by his name, calling what he did a justified action or something that he did of right mind and sound mental clarity, completely makes it seem like he did something that was human, when in all reality he did one of the most evil actions that you ever possibly could. And while Yora is able to sympathize with that idea and that thinking process, At the same time, people like Chihiro and Samura cannot believe that anyone of sound mind would be willing to do this. And as of right now, I think just based off of Samura's answer, while the Sword Saint may seem clear-headed, we have to remember that the Shinichi and the true realm of that blade, the connection and the fusion between the Sword Saint and his sword, is something that we do not truly fully understand yet. So I think it's safe to say we shouldn't count out the fact that the Sword Saint has something else guiding him. The Shinichi may be pulling the strings. We don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, and I don't think we should make assumptions yet. Because while Yora is smart, he's not infallible. I don't think anybody in this story is. I think that's something that we can definitely chew on and keep in our minds as we get ready to enjoy what might be one of the absolute craziest finale battles of the entire Kagurabachi series. And guys, if you are just as excited as I am to get into that, make sure you hit that like button, you hit the hype button, and you subscribe to not only not miss any future Kagurabachi videos and reviews, but also if you read any other weekly series like Sakamoto Days, Chainsaw Man, Gachi Akuta, Don Don, or even JJK Modulo, you can definitely get it all on this channel here, as well as any kind of video game playthroughs on the video game channel, No Operator Live, or long form content on the main channel, guys. And I'll catch you guys there. Peace.